Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. Well, it is bowl season. It feels crazy. The longer that I do this, the quicker and faster each season occurs. Maybe it's an age thing. Maybe as you get older, things just go by quicker. If that's true, man, that is definitely sad. But we are already here. The regular season has come and went. I gave my thoughts on the Iowa Hawkeye football team this past season. And I can sum it up as pretty much this. Iowa had a defense and a special teams that was good enough to compete in the top 15 of the country as a whole. But the Iowa offense was so far behind and so limited that it basically dropped Iowa all the way back to a top 40, top 35 team. And if you look at the stats, if you look in average, the defensive, special teams, and the offensive stats together, that's roughly where Iowa is. Statistically, their record, things like that. Now, are they a couple of plays away from being a 9-3 football team, playing for their 10th win of the season? Let's see. They're 7-5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So yeah, 9-3. Sure, of course. But even last years past where Iowa wins 9-10 games, they're also a few plays away from that 10-win season actually being a 7-win season. So it goes both ways. Now, this video is going to be the game preview for the Music City Bowl. I believe that's the bowl game Iowa's playing in against Kentucky in Nashville. I have had you guys covered every step of the way, and it has been phenomenal. There's been a ton of news in between the regular season and the bowl game. People deciding to play in their 6th year. Nico Ragaini, aka Nico Ragaini, is going to be coming back for his 6th year, with sixth year, which I think is actually pretty big news for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think Nico has been an extremely underutilized wide receiver for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Where if he was in a more pass-happy offense, I think he would be a 500-600-yard receiver, no problem. We've also had recruiting situations where Caden Proctor decided to spurn the Iowa Hawkeyes on the last minute, last couple days of the recruiting process and go play for the Alabama Crimson Tide. So a lot has happened. But this video mainly is going to be the game not mainly, it is Iowa versus Kentucky game preview. Now, it's not going to be as in depth as the other ones are. I'm going to show you guys the depth chart and things, the ESPN game summary that I always do, and perhaps a few Pro Football Focus grades and a game prediction. So pretty much the same as always, but just a little bit quicker here. The bottom line is, folks, before I pull up some of the visuals here, the bottom line is college football has changed and there's no looking back. The bowl season outside of the college football playoff and maybe some of the BCS bowls, as it were, some of the prestigious bowl games, outside of those, and even the BCS bowl games, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a guarantee. The bowl games are basically a practice run or a preseason game for the next season. They still count for the current season, but because of all the guys who leave and all the youngsters that are getting snaps, it's basically a very, very early preseason game for next year's college football team or college football season. For example, with the Iowa Hawkeyes, you have Joey Labas, who I am very, very high on, still am, who's going to be getting his first start for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Yet, Cade McNamara, who is not currently on the roster of yet, but he has signed his letter of intent to play for the Iowa Hawkeyes, is the favorite to be the starter next year. So, point is, the bowl games are not what they used to be, where it was, one team's best roster versus another team's best roster, and they are playing it out. Hopefully, they're both playing their best football of the season, and they're both at top strength, and they're both playing against each other to get one more win for the season. It's partially that, but it's mainly a little crystal ball into next year's team, while also being a nice little bow for this previous year's squad. So let's dive into it, shall we? Overall, I think that Iowa was somewhat lucky to get this bowl game. I think a big reason that they got this bowl game, here's the depth chart for the Iowa Hawkeyes. A big reason they got this bowl game is two things. One, it's been a while since they played in the Music City Bowl, and there has been some other Big Ten teams who have played in this game more recently. So Iowa was definitely one of the contenders on the list. And number two, Iowa's fan base always travels well. Although, I'm not sure that this year, considering how disappointing the season turned out to be, is going to have as much optimism and as much fan engagement as years prior. So right off the bat, the things that I want to discuss here, what things am I looking for going into this game with regards to the Iowa Hawkeyes? Well, number one, I want to see some of the youngsters, Joey Labas, Xavier Wanpa. I want to continue to see Caleb Johnson and see if we can get a glimmer into the beast that I believe he's going to become by this time next year. I mean, the guy is already ahead of his years, but I think I'm predicting that he is going to be full-fledged a star next year. And this is going to provide a glimpse into that because, these practices, you wouldn't necessarily think on the surface that they would make that big of a difference as opposed to a full year's time going into the next season. But there are some guys who you watch the bowl game and they just pop. And, those 14, how many ever practices they get, those extra practices really benefit some of those guys. So Caleb Johnson, I would say, the wide receiver group, Deontay Vines, Brody Brecht, since they're going to have bigger roles, I think there's a good chance we're going to see true freshman Jacob Bostic, as he is not over his snap count in order to redshirt. So I think it's possible, definitely possible for Jacob Bostic, but overall possible for some of the true freshmen to see some snaps because they're not going to go over their limit in order to lose their red shirt. So there's some young guys that I'm looking forward to seeing. And then obviously, the veterans, how will they look? And, their last game playing as an Iowa Hawkeye, Riley Moss, Jack Campbell, it's Jack Campbell's last game. Sam Laporta, these guys have been a part of a crap ton of victories for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I would say Riley Moss, Jack Campbell, and Sam Laporta may end up being, and for that matter, Spencer Petras, may end up being some of the winningest players in Iowa football history. So that's always good. That's always good to see. But the main thing that I am looking for outside of, a few position groups, how do they look with some new personnel, like the linebacking group, officially losing a very talented linebacker in Justin Jacobs to Oregon. The main thing is the offense. What is the offense going to look like? Are we finally going to see the promised changes that we have been promised for pretty much 2 years now. And here's the thing, folks. I am going to sit here right now and I'm going to tell you, do not get your hopes up, because this has been the case for the past 2 years, where Iowa has a mediocre, if not totally below average offensive output for the season. And then the media, pumps up these stories where they say, so-and-so said that there's new offensive schemes. There's new offensive plays in the playbook. This looks different. This looks different. Oh, wow, that looks really cool. They're utilizing his legs more, because it's Joey Labas. They're incorporating a little bit more motion, things like that. We have heard that for the past 2 years. So I am not going to get sucked in. And I'm telling you right now, don't get sucked in either. Allow your eyes to be the real test here. What will they actually show it on the field come later this week against Kentucky? That's the real question. The real question is Iowa's offense. How much different does it look? Those are the two. That is the biggest thing. The two biggest things I would say would be Joey Labas. How does he look as the new starting quarterback now that Alex Padilla is gone? Spencer Petras is likely gone. No, Spencer Petras is gone. That is definitely it. All right, guys, let's take a look at this here. Kentucky is 7-5. Kentucky, I said this the last time Iowa played Kentucky. They are very similar. They're in a very similar position in the SEC as Iowa is in the Big Ten. They're not at the top of the Big Ten, but they're not at the bottom. At certain years, they're at the top. Certain years, they are somewhere in the middle, where they struggle to really take that next step forward. So I see these programs as very, very, very similar programs. Now, with Iowa, I think that their ceiling could be immeasurably higher than what it currently is if they make some of the changes offensively. But again, I'm not going to get too far into that because, we've been there before. ESPN Power Index gives Kentucky a 50.5 chance of beating Iowa. It's pretty evenly matched. The Power Index sees Kentucky and Iowa as pretty similarly stacked squads. Spencer Petras is not going to be the starting quarterback for Iowa. I don't believe Levis will be the starting quarterback for Kentucky either. Rushing yards, Caleb Johnson will be there. Hopefully he can inch even closer to 1,000 yards. I'm hoping he has at least a 100-yard day, obviously, because that will mean good things for Iowa, but also, that he'll have put together a dang good freshman year. That's the case. C. Rodriguez looks to be pretty good running back for Kentucky. Sam Laporte is Iowa's leading receiver. B. Brown is the leading receiver for Kentucky. Again, I don't know who's going to play for Kentucky and who is not. I'm sure Kentucky fans will comment. Iowa is actually a 2-point favorite right now, with the over and under being 31. So we'll see if that changes. Here are the team stats here. Points per game, 17.4 to 22.1. Yards allowed per game, or points allowed per game, 14.4 to 19.1. Total yards, 255 to 336. Huge disparity there. Passing yards, 158 to 216, it looks like. Yards rushing, 97 to 126. Yards allowed, 277 to 320. Passing yards allowed, 173 to 174. Rushing yards allowed, 104 to 145. So hopefully Iowa can capitalize on the weakness that is Kentucky's rush defense. I wouldn't say overall it's necessarily a weakness, but of the stats, that is one that pops out there. Obviously, Kentucky's offense is better than Iowa's offense, whereas Iowa's defense is better than Kentucky's defense. In games like this, you always hear, how will the Big Ten team fare against the athleticism and the speed of Kentucky? We've heard that so many times. We've seen Iowa is more than fine when it comes to their athleticism. We saw it against USC a few years back. We saw it against Mississippi State. Hell, we even saw it against Kentucky when Iowa last played them. So to me, that is not the biggest issue. The biggest issue, again, is the offense. So, all right, guys, let me see if I can find Kentucky's depth chart here, and then I will be giving you guys my prediction on this game. I might pull up some of the Pro Football Focus grades for this game. But again, two very evenly matched teams. Kentucky is built very similarly than Iowa in a lot of ways. So, game prediction. Bowl games are very tough to predict for a variety of reasons, but they're even tougher to predict nowadays because of the sheer amount of guys that are out, that are not just to the NFL or to graduation, but to the transfer portal. I mean, I would say at least 25% of, or at least 10% of the main contributors for most teams are gone by the time the bowl game comes around. And it just is what it is. I wish it wasn't so, but that is the way it is. So, very difficult to predict. Bottom line is, there's no way to predict how Joey Labas is going to perform in his first game as a starting quarterback. I am very excited to see him under center. I am very high on him. I've said that for months now. I said at the beginning of the season that Joey Labas would be the guy that I went with for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and just allowed him to grow as the season went on, just due to how good Iowa's defense and special teams were. They would be able to protect him, unlike other teams who don't have as good of a defense or a special teams. And if you look at how Iowa's defense ultimately performed, you can't tell me that Joey Labas wouldn't have had a lot of room to make mistakes. I mean, hell, Spencer Petras did. So I would have went with Joey Labas, and a lot of the reports that we were hearing were so positive. Joey Labas's high school film, granted, it was high school, was through the roof. He was supremely under recruited. The guy is 6'4", 6'5", has a cannon of an arm. He can move very well. But again, an actual game is different than high school, the high school ranks, and playing on the scout team. So there's no way to fully predict or anticipate how Joey Labas is going to do. With that being said, I think Caleb Johnson is going to look good. I think this Iowa Hawkeye offensive line is going to be ready to go. I think they are going to benefit greatly from these extra practices, or at least I'm hoping they will. I'm very excited to see how Deontay Vines, Brody Brecht, and Nico Ragaini perform as the main core unit together. I also hope that we see Jacob Bostic. This Iowa defense is going to play great. I have no question with that. Iowa special teams is going to be fine. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Iowa Hawkeyes to win this game 22-17. Now, again, can Iowa score 22 points? Who knows? But I think this is a very winnable game. If Iowa can get to 8 wins on the season, I think that'll be very positive considering how up and down this year has been. Kentucky is not a bad football club. And yes, they do have athleticism. And yes, they do have freaks all over this team. So in a good way. I would not be the least bit surprised if Kentucky came out and put it on the Iowa Hawkeyes. But I don't think that's going to happen. As I said, I think this is a very evenly matched game with two teams that are coming into this looking to answer some questions. I think both teams have a lot of questions that need to be answered at different positions. Kentucky and Iowa both are looking at the quarterback, although I would say Iowa is probably a little bit more steadfast at that position with Cade McNamara coming in, who has had proven success. So it will be interesting. As I said, I'm taking the Hawkeyes to win this game. I think the Iowa defense limits Kentucky overall, and I think Iowa is able to run the game. I do think Iowa's offensive line is going to benefit greatly from the extra practices. Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious on two things. Number one, what is your excitement level for this game as a whole? Are you excited at all? Is it just another game? Are you pretty down in the dumps when it comes to Iowa football of late? That's number one. And number two, what are you expecting for the Iowa Hawkeye offense and Joey Labas? What would you like to see with the new gunslinger under center? Very curious. Go ahead and comment in the comment section below. Like and share. Obviously, liking the video definitely helps. And of course, be sure to hit the subscribe button. It takes 1.25 seconds, and it supports your boy who has had you guys covered all year long with Iowa Hawkeye sports coverage, and will continue to do so moving forward. If you guys want to donate, you guys can hit the donation button, as this is the last game of the season for the Iowa Hawkeyes. You guys can give your boy a donation on our way into the offseason. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy willow. In fact, our feelings, because your feelings don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.